The first cub disappeared on the third night. At least, that was when the crew noticed. The iridescent Dawn was a joint, species research cruiser, home to over 200 beings from 7 worlds. Its lower habitat ring had been converted into a temporary sanctuary for the Volari cubs, young offspring rescued from a border skirmish that had left their broodship destroyed. Volari cubs were dangerous even as infants. Clawed, scaled, born with instinctive pack aggression, they slept in reinforced dens, monitored at all times by sensors and caretakers, which was why, when one den registered empty at 0300 ship time, alarms silently rippled through internal systems. No breach, no damage, no signs of struggle. The cub was simply gone. Commander Rex, the Volari Alpha assigned to oversee the sanctuary, assumed a malfunction. Sensors failed. Humans built strange systems. Then the second cub vanished, and the third. By the 5th night, 7 cubs were missing. Panic spread. Security teams swept the decks. Bulkheads sealed. Infrared scans found nothing. Life sign trackers showed faint readings, but scattered, moving, overlapping in ways that made no sense. The cubs were alive. And hiding. Whispers followed the patrols. Volari cubs did not wander. They did not explore. They stayed close to heat, sound, and dominant signals. They did not vanish. Commander Rex stood in the sanctuary, claws clenched, staring at the remaining cubs huddled together. They were restless, agitated. Their eyes kept drifting toward the corridor door. "Someone is taking them," one of the caretakers hissed. "Impossible," Rex growled. "No being aboard would dare." But doubt crept in. Humans had been different since the rescue. Curious. Gentle. Too gentle. One human in particular had drawn attention. Lieutenant Mara Ellison. She was assigned quarters 2 levels above the sanctuary, a small room barely larger than a storage module. She had volunteered during the rescue to help stabilize the cubs, despite being warned they might bite, claw, or kill her. She hadn't flinched. She had spoken softly. Sat on the floor. Let them approach her. The Volari had dismissed it as novelty. Humans were fragile. Their calm was ignorance, not courage. Still, Rex remembered how the smallest cub had curled against her boot that first day. On the 6th night, Rex ordered a full internal sweep with a specific directive. "Trace heat signatures," he said. "Ignore authorized zones." The scan returned a result that made the bridge go silent. Multiple cub-sized heat sources. Clustered. Stationary. Inside a human habitation sector. Inside one room. Lieutenant Mara Ellison's room. Security moved fast. Bulkheads locked. Power rerouted. A containment team assembled, armored, armed, breathing hard. Rex led them personally. The door to Mara's quarters was warm to the touch. Too warm. Rex slammed a claw against the access panel. "Human." "Open the door." There was a pause. Then the door slid open. The smell hit them first. Warmth. Fabric. Food. Something faintly sweet. The sight froze every being in the corridor. Mara stood barefoot, eyes wide in confusion, hair loose around her shoulders. Behind her, on the bed, the floor, the chair, even piled into open storage drawers, were the missing cubs. All of them. Curled together. Sleeping. Some were draped across her blanket. Others pressed against her legs. One tiny cub was tucked against her chest, its claws resting gently against her collarbone. Not restrained. Not frightened. At peace. Several Volari guards raised their weapons in reflex. The cubs stirred. Low growls rippled through the room, not aggressive, but warning, protective. Mara raised her hands slowly. "Please," she said, "don't scare them." Rex stared. This was impossible. Volari cubs did not bond outside their species. They did not choose non-pack members. They especially did not abandon secure dens to seek out a single human. "Explain," Rex demanded. Mara swallowed. "They started coming on their own." She gestured to the open vent near the ceiling. "The first one crawled in 3 nights ago. Shaking. Crying. I didn't know what to do, so I wrapped it in my jacket. Her voice trembled. Then another came the next night. Then more. I tried to tell someone, but every time I left the room they panicked. So I stayed. Why you? One of the guards asked. Mara looked down at the cub sleeping against her chest. Because they're scared. And because I don't smell like dominance. That word echoed. Dominance. The foundation of Valari society. Rex felt something crack. You broke protocol, he said weakly. I know, Mara replied. You can punish me later. Just don't take them away like this. As if understanding, the cubs shifted closer to her. One let out a soft sound, something between a purr and a whimper. Rex had never heard that sound before. He lowered his weapon. Slowly, the others followed. Medical scans were conducted. The cubs showed reduced stress hormones, improved healing rates, better neural development. They were thriving in a human's room. Over the next days, Valari elders demanded answers. Investigations were launched. Cultural experts argued. But the data did not lie. The cubs had chosen safety over strength, warmth over dominance, presence over control. They had chosen a human. Rex visited Mara alone on the 7th night. She sat on the floor, surrounded by cubs, reading softly from a human book. They won't always need me, she said without looking up. They just needed someone to stay when they were scared. Rex watched as the smallest cub climbed into her lap. I was taught fear creates loyalty, he said quietly. Mara smiled sadly. Fear creates silence. That's not the same thing. When the cubs were eventually moved back to the sanctuary, Mara went with them. Not as a guard, as a caretaker. The Valari changed their protocols, and across the ship the story spread. The night the alien cubs vanished and chose a human room instead. Because sometimes the most shocking thing in the galaxy is not violence, but kindness that refuses to leave. The change did not happen all at once. It never does. At first, it was small things the Valari pretended not to see. The cubs slept differently now. Instead of coiling tightly in defensive knots, they sprawled, limbs loose, claws relaxed, breathing deep. Night terrors decreased. Bite reflexes dulled. When startled awake, they no longer lashed out blindly. They searched for Mara. Always Mara. The sanctuary had been modified to include human standard furnishings at her insistence. Soft mats, fabric layers, temperature controls adjusted just a few degrees warmer than Valari norms. The elders had protested until the medical data came in. Cortisol levels dropped by 40%. Healing accelerated. Neural growth spiked in regions associated with learning and social bonding. The cubs were not becoming weaker. They were becoming adaptable. Commander Rex watched from the observation platform as Mara entered the den. The cubs sensed her before the doors even opened. Heads lifted. Tails flicked. A ripple of excitement passed through the group like a shared heartbeat. They did not rush her. They waited. She knelt, as always, lowering herself into their space instead of demanding they rise to hers. One by one, they approached. Rex felt something twist in his chest. Valari leaders were obeyed. They were never welcomed. The first true test came during a routine handling drill. A Valari trainer entered the den alone, attempting to guide the cubs through dominance-based positioning. He raised his voice, just slightly, enough to assert authority. The reaction was immediate. The cubs moved, not toward him. Around Mara, they formed a loose semicircle, bodies angled outward, positioning her at the center. Protective formation. The trainer froze. Rex ordered the drill aborted. That night, emergency council was called. This is unacceptable. Elder Koroth snarled. They are imprinting incorrectly. They are imprinting successfully. A Valari biologist countered. Just not according to tradition. Our traditions made us strong, Koroth insisted. Rex spoke quietly. Our traditions made us alone. Silence followed. Then came the incident that made secrecy impossible. A foreign delegation arrived aboard the iridescent Dawn, Krellin observers, a species that valued dominance even more ruthlessly than the Volari. Their interest in cub development programs was predatory. They requested a demonstration. Rex objected. Mara was ordered to stay away. The cubs were brought into the viewing arena without her. The moment the doors sealed, distress signals spiked. The cubs vocalized sharp, panicked sounds that echoed painfully. They searched, scratched at the doors. One collapsed into a stress seizure. Medical alarms blared. The Krellin observers laughed. "Your cubs are weak," their envoy said. "They cannot even endure separation." Rex ignored him. He activated his comm. "Bring Mara. Now, orders be damned." When she entered the arena, barefoot and breathless from running, the effect was instant. The cubs snapped out of panic like drowning swimmers breaking the surface. They surged toward her, but stopped short, checking themselves, remembering lessons she had taught them. Gentle, slow, together, the Krellin envoy's laughter died. "What is she?" he demanded. "A caretaker," Rex said. "No," the Krellin hissed. "She is a pack anchor." The phrase spread like fire. Pack anchor. A being whose presence stabilized an entire group. The Krellin demanded custody rights. The council refused. Diplomatic tensions escalated. Then the cubs did something no one had anticipated. During the night cycle, they moved. Not to Mara's quarters. To the corridor outside the council chamber. They lay there silent, unmoving, blocking access. No growls, no aggression, just presence. When guards tried to move them, the cubs pressed closer together. When Mara arrived, summoned in panic, they parted for her, but did not leave. They wanted her with them. In the morning, the council found itself unable to convene without walking past the cubs. The message was unmistakable. "Decisions about us will include her." The galaxy noticed. Footage leaked. Data packets spread. Analysts argued. A predator species had allowed a human emotional influence over their offspring. Commentators mocked it. Then other species began asking questions. Why were Volari cub mortality rates dropping? Why were their aggression indices stabilizing? Why were mixed species teams reporting unprecedented cohesion? Humans were invited to consult. At first, Mara refused to be called anything other than a caretaker. Then the cubs started calling her something else. The translators struggled. The closest approximation was 1. Who stays? As the cubs grew, they trained. They fought harder than expected, smarter than anticipated. They coordinated without commands. In combat simulations, they outperformed older cohorts because they protected each other instinctively. When one fell, the others closed ranks. Krellin strategists called it terrifying. Volari elders called it evolution. Rex watched a training match where one of Mara's cubs was knocked down by a larger opponent. Before the strike could land, 3 others intercepted, redirecting force, not retaliating blindly. Victory through restraint. Afterward, the cub approached Mara, chest heaving. She placed a hand on his brow. "Good choice," she said. "Not good kill. Good choice." The cub stood taller. Years later, when those cubs stood as full warriors before the Galactic Assembly, they did not roar first. They waited. For Mara, she did not stand beside them. She stood behind them, and the cubs, now leaders, spoke with one voice. "We'll learn strength from our people," they said. "We'll learn courage from our enemies. Why learned loyalty from a human who stayed when she was afraid?" The assembly chamber was silent. The Krellin withdrew their claims. The Volari rewrote their doctrines. And across the stars, a quiet rule spread among predator species. Never underestimate the species that does not lead through fear. Because when the cubs vanished into a human's room that first night, they were not hiding. They were choosing the future.